I want to talk a little about comparing the myths and deities of Britain and Ireland. It's something I got started doing because of living in Scotland. I'm not going to go over all that history about why both Irish and Brythonic deities are important in Scotland, more than just to say that both language groups and cultures contributed to Scotland's history. Over the years, this kind of work has become more and more important to me. I've looked at comparisons between Lu and Llay, Macha and Rhiannon, Manannán and Manawyddan, and many others. Sometimes I've brought Gaul into the picture, like with Maponos or Epona. I've explored the way so many Welsh stories have counterparts in Irish myth and the kaleidoscopic way in which they change and morph between the two islands. I often return to comparisons I've made in the past and adjust and refine them. So Manawyddan of the Mabinogi stories and Ireland's Manannán MacLear don't seem to have much in common at first. Manannán is clearly a deity, while Manawyddan mostly seems like some kind of mortal nobleman stuck in a story full of magic not of his own making. However, if you make the effort to get down into the layers of their stories, especially Manannán's many stories, their commonalities become more evident. Knowledge of magic and the other world, an interest in justice and the discernment of truth, taking on the role of an advisor to inexperienced leaders, and so much more. This understanding has brought both of them into better focus for me. Macha is a multifaceted goddess from Ireland. In the Ulster cycle, she's associated with horses. The Welsh Rhiannon has horses in her story too. And if you read the stories carefully, you'll find many common plot points under the surface. When we compare both stories to other tales from Ireland and Wales, we can see a wider pattern concerning a right relationship between men and the goddesses who lend them sovereignty over land and territory. Anything like a Celtic worldview of big topics like justice, good leadership, or being a good steward of the land are better understood through this kind of comparative work. Each culture sheds a light on the other, but we need to be accepting of differences too. Irish folklore about the conception, birth, and youth of Lugh has a lot in common with Llay's beginnings in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi. For example, there are convoluted stories about how they each have to be named by characters antagonistic to their survival. But several parts of the Irish god Lugh's story have important parallels with a different Welsh tale. In Cilhwch and Olwen, Cilhwch is out to marry the daughter of a dangerous giant who will be destroyed by his daughter's loss of virginity, just like Lugh's father's pursuit of Balor's daughter. But it's also Cilhwch who, like Lugh himself, throws a spear into the giant's eye. So Cilhwch's biography is partly that of Lugh, partly of Lugh's father. In the story of Llay, Lugh's Welsh counterpart, there are parallels to a different Irish tale. When Llay marries the woman Blodeuwedd, who's been created from flowers, she's soon unfaithful to him with their neighbor Gronw, and the pair plot to kill Llay. Blodeuwedd finds out how his magical protection can be overcome and betrays him. This story is clearly related to a tale from the Ulster cycle about the death of Cú Roy MacDara. Cú Roy, a powerful and magical character, gains a wife called Blaenna or Blanat, whose name also references flowers. Like the Welsh Blodeuwedd, she discovers how Cú Roy can be killed and betrays him to her lover, none other than the great Cuchulainn. Other than this story, Llay and Cú Roy have nothing in common. Based on what I know, I think it would be very wrong to say that they're somehow the same. And Gronw, the rival, certainly doesn't have the fame and standing of Cuchulainn. Neither are Llay's story and Cilhwch's story close parallels at all. It's as if sometimes storylines are more durable than the characters in the stories. Because of things like this, we need to take care when we try to base relationships between characters or deities on too small a body of evidence. Just being a betrayed husband or just having a similar name isn't enough to make a case for a true relationship between characters from different cultures, especially if you're comparing them because you want to honor one of them as a deity. Maybe this comes from our desire for certainty. In the case of Gaul and early Britain, the myths are lost, but even Irish and Welsh stories sometimes feel incomplete or enigmatic. One thing I'm convinced of is that it makes more sense to look for answers in mythology from Celtic speaking cultures rather than searching in other Indo European cultures. I see people trying to draw connections between Celtic deities or myths and those from Norse or Greek or Hindu myths. I'm not saying there's no connection, but often what they're doing is looking at both the Celtic material and the other material they're drawing from on a superficial level. They may be building up a picture of a deity based on a sentence or two in Wikipedia or something they read on social media. There was a great fashion for this kind of thinking in the late 19th and early 20th century. Anthropology and folk studies was full of theories about international tale types and why they existed. But today, more scholars are taking a different and more nuanced view of things, one which recognizes the holistic integrity of individual cultures. Unless you spend a good few years making a serious study of Celtic mythology, reading primary sources, then you don't really understand it well enough to compare it to other mythologies or to be a good judge of some theory about it that you came across. The Celtic material we have contains incredible riches and depth, but it takes time and dedication to get to grips with it. If you want some help getting started with reading Celtic mythology more like a grown up, my video about how to do online research and another one about the best books to try will help get you started. For the comparative stuff, a lot of my videos in my big Celtic mythology playlist will do that. Videos like Manannán and Manawyddan, Celtic horse goddesses, divine Celtic twins, does Celtic myth have a message? Just to name a few. There's also a big library of free to read articles on my Patreon page. Look for the collections tab at the top of the page. I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to think we understand a myth or deity fully. And that goes double for being too quick to say that two deities or two stories are basically the same. With myths, the longer you study them, the more layers you find. Sometimes I feel like I've had a big revelation about a myth, only to have another big revelation a year or two later. Sometimes both interpretations can exist side by side and enrich one another. Sometimes I have to back down and admit that one of my interpretations wasn't so clever after all. If we try to reduce the stories of Macha and Rhiannon down to the horse goddess myth or something like that, we haven't gained anything. We've actually lost something. It's kind of like taking a hamburger and a tuna sandwich and calling them both the sandwich meal. Reducing things to easy categories doesn't help our understanding that much. Sandwich may be true, but too much information has been cut away. It's not meaningful anymore. Tuna and ground beef don't taste like each other. The same is true of deities. The easiest answer is that they're all individuals, all different. Start trying to reduce them to, I don't know, a dozen archetypes or something, a lightning god, a river goddess, a trickster, a psychopomp, and you just end up with a set of cardboard cutouts. There's a difference between comparing deities in order to deepen our understanding of them and just reducing them to categories. We know from archaeology that Matrona, goddess of the river Marne in Gaul, was associated with healing. Boand, goddess of the river Boyne in Ireland, has quite a bit of mythology. She's the wife of Elkvar, the lover of Dagda, the mother of Oengus. She's said to bring about the creation of the Boyne itself due to a magical transgression. You'd have to look quite hard and maybe use your imagination, though, to see her as a goddess of healing, like Matrona. Yet it's possible that these two goddesses have a tenuous historical connection to one another. Studying Boan's myth can only really cause us to wonder whether Matrona had similar stories attached to her. Knowing that she had a healing aspect can alert us to the possibility in Boan, but they shouldn't be taken as simple equivalents. And of course, Matrona is also connected to the Welsh goddess Modron, and Modron is connected to Rhiannon, even though Rhiannon seems to be all about horses. Celtic myths and deities offer a lifetime of study. Maybe we try to reduce it to something simpler so we can feel more sure about the gods we're trying to honor. A spring maiden, a god of lightning, a crone. If you want to create something like that, then I think you need to recognize that you're creating something new, not reconstructing something old. You're imagining that Celtic speaking people of the past saw things in simple, broad, elemental strokes, that they were only capable of asking for a sandwich, but not saying what kind of sandwich they preferred. And if you're looking for categories and correspondences across all the different Celtic speaking cultures, that's a bit like saying pizza and tacos, they're just sandwiches. Time is a filter that distills, a fire that refines. There may not be a Gaulish version of Manannán mac Lir or an Irish equivalent of Aranhrod. Cultures move on. They create new things and let go of old ones. Many things bind the different Celtic cultures together across time and geography, but they're not mirror images of one another. What we know of the Celts of Gaul mostly comes from the period of Roman occupation. At the other end of the spectrum is Ireland, which was never occupied by the Romans. Somewhere in the middle is Britain. If you're drawn to one specific Celtic speaking culture, then you need to accept that it won't have everything the others do. In a way, it's a bit arrogant to think that you can recover or reconstruct whatever you think is missing. You can waste a lot of time looking for that missing sandwich filling that one culture had. Some people think tacos are too messy. Other people don't like tuna. If you're enjoying this series, why not take one of my online classes? There's almost always something on offer. Some classes have tiered pay what you can pricing, and there are usually a few scholarships available for the more expensive classes. To get notifications about classes and about scholarships when they're announced, you can go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter or follow me on my Patreon page.